Welcome back to another episode of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on, dude?
On the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
And finally joining us, we got WizOp from Bitmap Community. Thank you for joining us, man.
Hey guys, yeah, pleasure to be here. Been a fan of the show for a long time.
Yeah, man, we asked you to join us a long time ago, like early maybe July or something. But at that time, it was very early Bitmap days, and we've seen a lot of progress in Bitmap. So you want to go ahead and kick it off with I guess the origin story for WizOp and Bitmap Community, like how everything kind of transpired, and just tell us your origin story.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess my journey in crypto really started in 2020. And, I had been working in sales and finance up until that point. So really hadn't been into crypto or anything programming or data at all up until that point. But COVID hit and was let go from my job, and turned out to be a really great thing for me because I kind of knew that whole world wasn't everything that I wanted. And, I kind of always had my eye on programming and data. So it's perfect time for me to make the switch, and ended up doing a coding boot camp for 6 months where they teach you programming, and, you kind of learn all this kind of basic level stuff. And during that time, just absolutely fell in love and, found my passion and what I wanted to do. So from then on, I started looking for crypto projects that I could contribute to. And back then, 2020, 2021, the crypto bull was popping off, and, Ethereum and some of those alt chains were kind of the focus. So that's where most of my focus was, and was able to break into some projects on ETH and Polkadot as kind of a entry level programmer, and just became absolutely obsessed with everything blockchain, everything programming, and was just completely dialed in, and ended up getting wrecked in 22. When things came back down, I got a little wrecked there, but honestly glad I did, because it set us up for what's happening now. And I was actually in it for the tech. I wasn't leaving, I wasn't there just for the money. I was truly passionate about it, so never left. And then we saw ordinals pop up in early 2023, and I think like a lot of us, we just saw that and knew this was kind of the end game, and this is where NFTs were meant to be, and this is kind of what we've all been waiting for. So just was completely dialed in, and taking in everything ordinals that I possibly could. And once I saw Batoshi's tweet, and people were talking about Bitmap in June and in July, that's when it really clicked for me that Bitmap could be something huge, and that this idea, if it could resonate with me like it did, I was pretty convinced that it was going to resonate with others as well. And I saw your guys' videos. You guys played a huge part in, I think, a lot of people's curiosity of Bitmap and blockchain data, and all of that really cool stuff. So
Interesting.
Yeah, I was just fully enamored, and I was talking to some people around the ecosystem, and it was pretty early days at that time, but there really wasn't a lot of tooling for Bitmap. And me personally, I was very interested in blockchain data. That was up until that point. I had been doing pretty much everything I could to understand it and get to know it. Got a project that I've been working on that we are interacting with all sorts of different blockchain nodes, and pulling in all sorts of data, and really just trying to understand that and display it in a way that's easy for the user. And so I was pretty deep in the world, but once Bitmap came out, it was kind of my green light to build something on ordinals. And Bitmap just was the perfect thing to do that, because it's this really cool new asset class on Bitcoin, and it's all about the data. So just went full on, and we really wanted to represent the Bitmap community, and all of this information and passion that's in the minds of the community members. So we saw that the big marketplaces weren't really building for those people because we were so small. I mean, Bitmap was, I don't know, I mean, it was like $1, $2, $3 at the time, right? So
Yeah.
not a big opportunity for a lot of people, but we saw the passion in the community there. So, you know, it made perfect sense for us to move forward. And we ended up launching version 1 of our website and just had you know, an overwhelming outpour of support from the community. And you know, from then on, it's just been, you know, looking to improve on that and build things that help, you know, help people understand Bitmap and help Bitmap kind of move forward as an asset class. So that's where we are today.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel? We also built Mscribe, the first inscription platform built from the ground up for the metaverse on Bitcoin. Connect your Bitmap ordinals and use our tools to bring your community into the virtual realm. Support us by joining the movement at mscribe.io. Like, comment, and subscribe for the latest alpha. Back to the video.
Yeah. So, yeah, obviously the platform you built is like tremendously useful. It's, I think it supplied like a large thing that was like a missing thing. Cause you mentioned, you know, the importance of the data as like the major component of what makes Bitmap so truly unique. Right. And I think that was the thing that obviously grabbed our attentions. Like it was the first time we've ever witnessed like the real utilization of on-chain data for some sort of like new, you know, material manifestations, like what we like to call it. So we spent like a long time kind of like reflecting on that. I was like, well, why is this so cool? And the thing that's interesting about you, you know, you didn't really mention metaverse once when in context of Bitmap.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case for a lot of people. It's like, cause we are natively from the metaverse space. And like, we're in like a point of period between like metaverse, I guess, like
the before time.
Well, we were around before like the metaverse became a cool thing, right? Like, you know, Meta's company Pivot and all that stuff. All of a sudden there's mass awareness around this idea. Like the virtual dimension has a lot of significance to us, right? But then there was kind of like a lull after that. Not many people saw the value in that. It's like, you know, it's just kind of a pipe dream vision, right? But now the metaverse sector's kind of starting to like pick up some more momentum because of the Apple Vision Pro and such like that. But I think a lot of the people weren't really gravitated to Bitmap because of like the outline of that cohesive vision. It's like, yeah, Bitmap is cool. It can be leveraged as like an architectural framework for metaverse, you know, landscaping.
Yeah.
Right. It was more so, I think, the data component, right? Like, that was the real thing. I think that really touched all of us, potentially without us even really realizing it, right? Which is why we were like really motivated to slap like an umbrella understanding around this, right?
I think it's the data that had the staying power, the conviction, I guess measurement from the community is the data. But I mean, it was originally a metaverse like theory, right? It's like the Bitmap theory was like a metaverse like angle. So that's what attracted us first initially. Right. But it's the data that really kept us here.
Yeah, I think that's my point. Is like, I don't think many people, or some people were for sure. Metaverse is still cool, but I think the underlying thing to all of this that like really captured all of our and built this conviction within all of us is like, this is the first time we've seen, you know, the data being used for something, right? Yep. It was really cool. And obviously that's what attracted you because that's your background, right? In data, like analysis, right? So like, how quickly did you come to that like conclusion? Like, you know, was it right away? It's like, dude, it's just like that. You immediately understood like that's what makes this valuable. Is it the data thing, or was it more like, you know, just the fact that this is all like a head in the direction of maybe this is like a metaverse on Bitcoin layer? You know, how did that process break through in your mind?
Yeah, you know, I think for me, it was always the data, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've never really been involved in like the metaverse worlds before, and you know, as soon as I saw Bitoshi, you know, talking about like metaverse and data, the thing that really stuck out to me was that it was a metaverse, but it was constructed by Bitcoin block data, right? Like that's what interested me the most was that yeah, there's this new like type of asset that it's non-arbitrary, right? It's based off Bitcoin data that is, you know, nobody's like making the decisions on this or anything like that. Like it's all just on Bitcoin, and who knows like what could come of this. So yeah, when I first heard of it, it was all about the data for me. And coming from my background and what I like to do, Bitmap was like the perfect asset for me because it just represents all of the data on Bitcoin, and that's what I love. So
Yeah.
yeah, it just made total sense.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel? We also built MetaZone, the first app store for the metaverse. Buy, sell, and explore a new class of digital assets like our flagship game Rovi.ai. Support us by collecting your digital assets through MetaZone at metazone.io. Like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated. All right, back to the video.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I guess you can outline the platform for the viewers who haven't had the opportunity to interact with Bitmap.community. That is like your brand, and you're already kind of like stepping your foot into a lot of like the technical components that make up Bitmap. For one, like parceling, you guys have you've already completed like the first successful land distribution event, which is part of Bitmap theory, right? Like Pitoshi outlined, that is the kind of like the whole purpose of distributing these districts, right? Like you as a district owner, you now contain the ability to kind of like build your own ecosystems out of this thing, right? You have land to distribute,
Yeah,
parcelization and such. Yeah, the mechanisms of that, it's kind of like squirrely at times because there's like you do tapping, parent child, like what is the actual architectural framework for this? That's like that needs a little bit more like consensus agreement, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's only consideration of like consensus only because Jubilee enabled parent-child in like a bulk transaction, which is kind of what you need for parcels, right? Because you don't want to inscribe individual parcels like manually, right? And so you want to do it as a bulk transaction. So Jubilee enabled that. And so with that enablement, it's like, well, doesn't it make sense to have parcels as a child of a bitmap rather than just like tapping, right? And so that's like still in progress. I mean, I think Benny's still indexing bitmap as for Jubilee, and I think that's going to be ready to go in the next couple of days or so. So, but nonetheless, both methods are going to be supported. So yeah, I mean, Bitmap Community doing a land distribution event, and it was extremely successful. We postulated this was going to be like one of the main narratives for Bitmap. And we feel like there's going to be a lot more people doing land distribution events for their own kind of like ecosystem.
Yeah, what do you think? Well, what do you anticipate as far as like you guys kind of like set the ball in motion with your own distribution of parcels? How do you anticipate like more, I guess, brands, more people who they have a vision of whatever they want their bitmap to become? Like how do you envision that process looking like in the future?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that makes Bitmap such a unique asset is that it's the only one out there that you can kind of do this with, right? Like you have parcels, you have BMT tokens, all these different like block drops and things that you can tie to non-arbitrary data on Bitcoin, aka Bitmap, right? That's one of the unique things, unique thing about Bitmap. And so really the opportunities are endless in my point of view. I think that we're still really new to all this stuff, obviously. Like, you guys came out with DMT theory officially, not too long ago. And I feel like there's a lot that can be done there. Obviously, parceling, like, it's a way to not only fractionize your bitmap, but kind of create ownership in yourself like we've done. There's just I'm sure there'll be use cases in the future where you can actually like build on these parcels, and people can come in similar to like a Bitmap Valley type of setting where each like building is like one of their own parcels, right? Like there's just so many things that can happen here that I think we're still too early to predict all of them. But that's why Bitmap sparks the imagination of so many people, is that there's all of these different use cases, and the utility of your bitmap is decided based on the data inside of it, and all of that is decided by Bitcoin's invisible hand. So it's just really interesting, and who really knows what's going to come of it in the long run.
That's true. It's hard to make those predictions, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything's going to be an experiment, right?
Yeah.
So people are going to come up with their own like implementation, like or view on like how the world is going to work. And then you're going to see a bunch of LDEs based off of like we're focused on Frogs, right? This is like the frog community, right? And people are come up with their own like narrative to kind of support a land distribution event.
Right.
And so some are going to be successful and some are not. I mean, it's the same thing when launching a token. Like some do well, some do not. So so WizOp, what's your kind of view in like your own land distribution event? Was it in the context of the metaverse? Or is it sort of like a token that's a parcel that where you can do stuff with it because it's a parcel, but it means something specific to your platform? Like how did you see that like in terms of like a pitch to the community?
Yeah, so the parcels to us are essentially like ownership in Bitmap community, right? Like that's how we wanted to go about it is, our Genesis parcel holders, we view them as an extension of our business. And, we want to be a leader in the Bitmap ecosystem and, stay on the cutting edge of everything that's happening. We obviously can't do that with with everything that's going on, but that's the goal of ours. So yeah, I mean, we're offering a lot of really cool things to our Genesis parcel holders. I can get into those, but yeah, I think in the future, once people are starting to build metaverses and we actually have like things that people are using, we're for sure going to do all of that stuff. And our Genesis parcel holders are going to be right alongside of us when we do. But then we also have hopefully a profitable profitable business in the future where we can give profit sharing to our Genesis parcel holders. We obviously have a database full of really interesting bitmap data that's come from the minds of the community that we think other builders should have as well. And so our Genesis parcel holders are going to get access to that as well. So anything that we do, our Genesis parcel holders are going to benefit from that. And we really just wanted to onboard passionate community members that we can build with. So that was the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, like seeing the, yeah, I guess the utility scope expand beyond just like, metaverse application, right? And that's kind of the whole point. Like, these parcels ultimately at the end of the day, they're basically non-fungible tokens, right? And then, the scope of what you could do with a non-fungible token is pretty much infinite, right? They could serve many different functions, not just necessarily like assignable deployment grounds for content within this bitmap district, right? That's kind of like how we approach parcels, because that's our interpretation, right? Because I mean that's our background. That's what it is. We want to kind of like inject into the ecosystem as far as like real functional value for people who actually come into these virtual environments and want to actually have a presence on that actual space, right? Like that kind of is like the whole manifestation behind Bitmap, the purpose of that manifestation. But that doesn't necessarily mean like that's the bounds.
Yeah, correct.
Of utility, right?
Yeah. Whenever you separate a parcel from a bitmap, I mean, you can use that parcel for anything that you want. A token to represent like your community, a token to represent your business, right?
Yeah.
And then you can use that same token to deploy a virtual environment, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the beauty behind Bitmap and why I think everyone is extremely excited about it. And turns out it happens to be, among the biggest metaverses in Web3, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, right, out of thin air, right? So the whole idea is like your platform has been extremely useful in terms of like finding the data. So were you able to like quickly run a Bitcoin core, like extract that data and kind of like put all that information in a coherent way on your website? Like, does that come from like a background in data science, or do you have a team now? Like how does all that background stuff work?
Yeah. So so as I mentioned earlier, I've been kind of dealing with blockchain data for a few years now. It's been like a big passion of mine, and I've had a few other ventures where we've raised a seed round doing the same thing where we ingest data and make it digestible for a user. So we've had experience doing this for a while, and so yeah, we're very familiar with blockchain nodes, not only Bitcoin Core, but all sorts of different chains and RPCs and how to deal with this data and all of that stuff. So yeah, it's just what we love to do. And you know, so the on-chain part was probably the easier thing for us to do because, you know, it's just on Bitcoin. It's just about going and extracting it.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else can do the same thing, right? But the off-chain data is where we our kind of like major value add was. And you know, that took a little bit more time, and it's going to be an ongoing process probably forever because, you know, there's so many block attributes and so many different things that the community wants to see indexed. So that's where, you know, we spend most of our time now is just getting all of that in order. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just super fun and it's what we love to do. And you know, that's why Bitmap was such an obvious choice for us, is because we just love this world, and you know, Bitmap's an extension of it.
So let's give an example of what off-chain data would look like. So you're talking about like bitmapped punks, like specific looking, I guess bitmap orientations, right? How do you determine whether or not something should get like categorized as like a block tribute?
Great question. Yeah, so this one is pretty variable, right? Depending on the block tribute. There's some that are very based on the data, right? And there's others that might not be so. They're more like in the minds of the community. Perfect punks, for example, those ones. You know, if you go to our site, you can see all the different types of perfect punks that we have. But to define it, it's basically something that looks like a crypto punk, and each of the blocks inside of the bitmap are the exact same size and they align perfectly. And so stuff like that, you can actually go into the data and figure it out based on, you know, we used Genie data to index all of these, and, you know, people can verify that themselves. But it's just, you know, you can look at the output value of the transactions, and based on, you know, bitfeed.live's algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
you can determine what is a perfect punk and what is not a perfect punk using SQL. Stuff like that is, you know, it's on chain, and you know, shout out to Aximade on Twitter. He was one of the first to figure this out. But um, super cool that, like, you know, you can go in and find all of the perfect punks using SQL because it's in the data. You know, so that's the best, you know, kind of block tribute in my opinion. You also have things like community punks. You know, these are kind of the ones that are in the minds of the community, and there's really no algorithm to find these. You know, it's mostly like, what does it look like, and, you know, is it a punk to you? And you know, so there's also block attributes like that. But you know, that's the cool thing about Bitmap, is everyone kind of sees what they see, and we, you know, are trying to be the kind of like medium for that people can get it displayed and allow other people to discover it. And you know, that's what's been the really fun part about it.
So it can go even as far as like something that can't be extracted, I guess, from the on-chain data, like which of these bitmaps are part of like expector-verse, right? Like
Oh,
I
that's
think
right.
that is an actual block tribute, isn't it?
Yeah,
Expector
Bitmap Valley as well.
or Bitmap Valley, something like a, you know, I guess that's connected to some sort of like
Platform.
platform, or yeah, VE stack, virtual environment stack. So that's going to kind of manifest and continue down the road, right? You're going to have to like continue logging the existence of these block attributes, which you can't just like peer into data and like, you know, form these algorithms to, you know, I guess easily index this, right? Like, does that create, like, I guess extrapolate into the future, right? 5 years from now, Bitmap is like wildly successful, and that becomes quite an operation for you, right? Like a huge like data aggregation business, right? And I think that's kind of like what you're hoping for, because if you do get into that situation, right, there's a lot of I guess API access that is going to be very important for the rest of the developers around this ecosystem, right? Is that kind of like the strategy, or you guys kind of like internally have kind of like figured out? It's like, just we need to just harbor as much information about these things as much as possible, right? Whether it's on chain or off chain. And I guess through that, like, how do you envision sustaining into the future, right? Like, you know, like a business model or monetization method.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I mean, 100%, right? Like, that's honestly, that's not how this started. You know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it was early days. Bitmap was $1, and we were like, hey, this is just really interesting. Like, let's start indexing this stuff and be the voice for the native bitmapper. And you know, that's how we've been building up to this point. And we'll continue to do that forever because, that's really at the core of who Community is. But yeah, I mean, we have gotten to a point where we have a real opportunity here to, be the voice, be the voice of Bitmap and kind of harbor all this data. And, we want to get into the hands of other developers in the community too, because we feel it plays a key role, and, other people should be able to use this as well. So we definitely want to share this and let others use it. So yeah, we're working on those things right now. We also are interested in, building a marketplace. So, we have our aggregator at the moment where we're pulling in listings from Magic Eden and Ordinal's wallet. But we're obviously going to, allow people to buy and sell bitmaps on our platform as well. Parceling, inscriptions, we'd love to get into DMT and allow people to like inscribe their BMT tokens on our platform. Pretty much anything that revolves around Bitmap, we want to help move forward. So that's why our resources are dedicated, is, helping build things that Bitmappers need. And, we feel that as long as we stick to our community and we listen to their voice, then, revenue is going to come, and we're going to be a key player in the ecosystem. So that's what we've done up to this point, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, anything that helps kind of the Bitmap ecosystem kind of grow, it's going to require multiple actors kind of contributing to the whole ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
It can't be done by any single source, right? That's not how you grow into a multi, $100 billion ecosystem, which it could get into, right?
Yeah, I mean that's traditionally how it's been done, and again, that's our background, right? This metaverse, we've observed this space kind of evolve over the last 4 years, and yeah, that is another one of the things that kind of like stuck out to us, is the opportunity of like aligning a community and developers specifically, like to where we're all kind of contributing to the infrastructure components that make up like this ecosystem you're talking about.
That's right.
Typically, it's all done by like a singular entity or force, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, they can achieve it. They could do it. They're going to raise a ton of money, whether it's like an ICO or a land distribution event of their own.
Right.
The other side, they raise like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Through the sale of land, right? So here they are building this entire infrastructure layer, MML, all these other different like primitives that can be used, by developers to kind of like strengthen that ecosystem. So that was another like new thing for us. Like this is the first time we've seen a truly like an open metaverse kind of like form before our eyes, right?
Yeah.
That's true to the definition of that. Everybody like to say like the predecessor metaverse ecosystems were open metaverses, but they really were not in a sense. I mean, they had like some DAO mechanisms and stuff to kind of contribute to things, but
yeah, the internal team decided on what the world looked like. Right. With Bitmap, we have several people deciding what the worlds look like, and the community gets to decide what they're going to connect to, what they're going to use. Right.
Yeah. So it's a nice little like dual faceted like experiment we're having. We got this side that's, traditional, very like structured, very corporate, right? And then we have this like truly open source movement happening in the metaverse space. Now it's all happening on Bitcoin, and it's working. Like here we are, like 8 months later?
Yeah.
I remember back in the early days, we were just like theorizing, like this might work.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully this does.
Yeah.
But that's the whole idea, right? And it's actually the ecosystem players like yourself, and ourselves, we're still here and we're still building, and the infrastructure is starting to like show up, right?
Yeah. So I'm curious, when you did the land distribution event, and I think there were 500 sold, right? 500 parcels sold.
Yeah.
What about the rest of the parcels? Are you planning on selling those, or are they going to be used for something else? What do you think, WizOp?
Yeah. To be honest, we don't really know yet. I think it's, we wanted to build a small, like tight community of 500, which is why we went with that number. Seemed like a good number for us to kind of be small enough that we can still be in touch with everyone's, without growing too big and kind of losing track of what it means to be a community. But that's why we went with that 500 number. But the bitmap that we parceled has over 6,000 transactions on it. So yeah, we've got a lot of room to expand here. And what we end up using it for, not sure yet. Yeah, I think we're still so early that I mean, we're kind of the first ones to really have a successful land distribution event. And I think it's going to be the start of a lot of different things that happen with parcels, and we'll kind of see what they end up being used for. But whether we end up minting them or building stuff on them, whatever it ends up being, Genesis parcel holders will play a key role in that, and they might get airdropped them or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, we're building for our Genesis parcel holders. Those are our core community, and we don't plan to unlike diluting that at all. That number is going to stay at 500, but whatever the rest of those parcels are used for, to be determined.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a product of just being that early, but I see there's going to be a lot of potential in these land distribution events, and I feel like there's going to be lots of ways to leverage land parcels, at least virtually, right? I think it's like infinite opportunities when you're talking about outside the virtual realm, right? Because these tokens could be their own PFP project, right? They could contribute to some DeFi aspect, right? And the same way that we're seeing with like Merlin, staking a bitmap gets you like wrapped map, right? So people, seem to kind of gravitate towards having some sort of level of liquidity, right?
Yeah,
for a bitmap. And so there's tons of use cases, right? And this is what we anticipated. We anticipate that every single crypto project is going to have some sort of like foot inside the metaverse, right? It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just, what is it going to look like, right? How is everyone going to interact with each other, and what sort of virtual environment are you going to be in? And because I think the virtual environment does play a role, because it sort of contextualizes everything that we've seen on the internet, but it makes it a little bit more multiplayer. And so I think that seems like where things are going to go. But like people can use parcels for pretty much anything is what I'm trying to get at.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm just curious because you use some buzzwords that we like on this show a lot, like non-arbitrary and digital matter and such. How far have you like peered into like this rabbit hole of like because considering you do indexing and you're no novice when it comes to like data analysis and such, right? Like that is your passion, you even said. So I'm assuming this new realm that we're kind of like exploring ourselves and trying to introduce into this crypto ecosystem is something that needs further focus, right? Because we see tremendous opportunity that this is something that hasn't been done before, a whole new utility and purpose for the Bitcoin data layer. How far have you gone, I guess, like as a group, you and your team, like exploring
how deep the rabbit hole have you gone?
Yeah, block space, like what's your reportings? Is it like your own individual block running, as we like to call it,
For sure, yeah. I mean, it's quite the rabbit hole. Yeah, but you guys know this too. I mean, it's like digging into all of this stuff is kind of this endless rabbit hole that goes very deep, and I absolutely love that. So yeah, when you guys came out with DMT, it was right up my alley. Obviously, like this is exactly what I'm interested in. So it's definitely something that we're looking into. And I think BMT tokens are sort of flying under the radar at the moment. And so yeah, that's one of the things that we want to help people kind of understand a little bit better. I think NAT and just DMT in general can be a little confusing to a lot of people because it is a little complicated, and you kind of have to get into the weeds a little bit in order to fully understand it, in my point of view. And so what we want to do is really make that accessible to people and give them a way, fight the fight with you guys, right? And help people like understand it a little bit more better, and help them kind of create use cases for it and take advantage of it, because it is an extension of Bitmap, right? Like Bitmap is kind of it's all about the data, and DMT tokens are all about the data too. I mean, it's non-arbitrary, and we're all dealing with the same stuff here. So it's really exciting thing that it's just another kind of use case that is untapped in my point of view. And so yeah, we're fully are engaged in building towards support for this.
Yeah, I can kind of explain why BMT is flying under the radar. So it's a technical limitation at the moment. So when we were talking to Benny, he was like, we can definitely do BMT, which is it's a block drop token. So what that means is basically, for those that you don't know, is you have to own a bitmap in order to inscribe these fungible tokens. So if you hold this bitmap, you can inscribe a child version of a non-arbitrary token, and then that'll get indexed. So the limitation is right now when indexing, right? Bitmap needs to be re-indexed in the context of Jubilee, and so we're waiting that to be live for that to be live in order to initiate the whole BMT thing. So technically, it all works. It's just we're waiting for proper indexing from Benny's side to kind of make it go. So that's why it's been a little bit slow from the non-arbitrary angle for bitmaps. But once that's live, like it's all open gates for everybody to kind of think of different patterns and point those patterns to bitmap holders, and then anyone who's holding that bitmap can inscribe that non-arbitrary token.
Yeah, but speaking of like indexing and Benny and track and all that stuff, like how tapped into you are into that whole like ecosystem, right? Because it is kind of like entering into like it's this distribution phase where now track core is being realized, right? It all started off with like basically a centralized actor kind of like provisioning this source of truthness that we've all really depended on for the last 6 months, specifically for bitmap, right? But yeah, Benny's in the process of embedding all this into like an infrastructure that can now be supported by third-party actors, a distributed network of nodes, right? Are you considering contributing to that, or do you maybe foresee some sort of like avenue where you maybe do something on your own, like tertiary to track? Like, how do you guys think of it approaching this huge market need as an indexer, right? You guys can actually like fit in perfectly, because for all the developers that need access to this type of information.
Yeah, 100%. First off, we're huge fans of Track and Benny. I mean, Benny is an absolute goat. He's doing so much moving this space forward. And yeah, I mean, we also use Track, right? Like we're using their API for a lot of our stuff as well. And they're doing something huge for the ecosystem. And we would love to, like, we're not trying to break into exactly what Track is doing, because that's kind of a little bit out of our scope. We're kind of focused on bitmap at the moment, but yeah, I mean, we're going to run our track core node. Once he releases the bitmap support for it, we'll be supporting them in every way. But yeah, I mean, our main value add up to this point has been kind of the off-chain data, right? Like all of the block attributes and all of that stuff, rarity scores, and everything we do to kind of make the data a little bit more digestible for the user. So that's where we want to continue to play, and we're obviously gonna build things that help support the bitmap ecosystem, regarding like all of these other things that we've been talking about, DMT, parceling as well. So that's kind of where we see our path going. But yeah, I mean, at some point, who knows, we might get into wanting to index some of the same stuff that Track is, but we'll obviously be a big supporter of Track no matter what, running their infrastructure.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing the same thing. I mean, Track cores, this whole indexing problem, and it's like reliance on the whole ecosystem is kind of like a big deal, right? If we can distribute the nodes who are the harbors of the truth, the better, right? Better than kind of relying on a central point of failure.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So yeah, we're gonna be running the Track as well, or Track core as well, and kind of contributing in just indexing and kind of sharing meta protocols with like the ecosystem, so that we can sort of contribute in a larger way. Just because like the whole DMT is so large, like we're talking about enabling like the community to discover patterns within Bitcoin, and patterns that we can't even like think of. Some other people are coming up patterns that we've never like thought of, right?
Yeah.
And so they're contributing in like into the meta protocols. Like, hey, I want this pattern. I want it to kind of work this way. It's like, how do we update the meta protocol to recognize this pattern?
Yeah.
And so this thing is like really big, and so we need tons of like contributors to kind of help with like the implementation of these things. So so yeah, I mean, the more people that we can get like help and contribute, like the better. And so like what you guys are doing is fantastic, right? Since you guys have a background like this data engineering and data science, like this is like the single most important aspect of DMT. So yeah, you guys are on the right path, I think.
Yeah, we're super excited. I think, yeah, I mean, data is it's such an important thing. And especially in this world, and once we get into the metaverse, I mean, I envision a lot of metaverse companies wanting to partner with companies like us because, we have the data, track included. All of those metaverses will want data to display in their worlds and let users interact with, right?
1,000%.
So yeah, we see this as a really good opportunity for us in the long run.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's definitely going to become a realization like that is really going to be a very in demand service or sector. I don't know how to label it exactly. Like to me, I view like indexing as like as critical as knowing like solidity, blockchain programming from last cycle, right? I remember seeing like job listings, like for like blockchain developers, solidity programmers, such like that, for like $400,000 or $500,000 salaries entry, just because it was that in demand, because there was not enough people out there with that level of expertise who knew how to like actually support this nascent ecosystem that is like the Ethereum development world, right? So like, but of course now more developers, they figured out how to do that. So like the value is kind of like reached like a sensible
reasonable
stage,
level,
right? But like indexing seems like the new thing, like at least relevant to Bitcoin, and actually it's kind of like permeating to other chains now too. Like but there are like infrastructure, I guess, players like the Graph and Chainlink and such outside of Bitcoin that kind of like do that provisioning, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess, man, it is quite the dilemma. I don't know. Me and Will talk about this all the time because we were kind of late to the Ethereum thing, I guess.
Yeah,
we weren't around during the days where like
they were like discussing infrastructure.
Well, piecing together like what it is we're trying to do right now. It's like how the hell are we gonna like form this indexer network, right? That is, I feel like we depended on it so much more than what they did, right, back in those days. So, I feel like if you're gonna contribute anything to Ordinals or Bitmap, like at some point it becomes inevitable. You realize like, you're gonna have to pick up this torch of like indexing and contribute, right? Otherwise, we're creating too many central points of failure. And you're kind of like gimping yourself as like a developer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like been my takeaway so far.
Yeah, I agree. WizOp, I'm curious, like, what's your feedback on DMT? Is like, what things do you see needs to be improved on, and how do we get DMT closer to like the Bitmap ecosystem? Like, is there something else that we could do with block drops that you see that we don't?
It's a great question. For me, I think a lot of people just don't really get it yet. I think that's just the honest truth, is like people just don't really fully grasp what it means to do that, right? And what is like a DMT token, and
how would you explain DMT? Like if you were introducing the concept to somebody?
I would say that it's, well, non-arbitrary token, right? If they understand what that means, but it's really a token that's created from the data on Bitcoin, and there's no outside influence on this, right? It's produced by Bitcoin, produced by the invisible hand of the market, all the transactions, all of the value, everything that is happening on the Bitcoin network. It can then be transformed into a token, and based on the bitmap that you hold, or what if you're doing a BMT token, bitmap is you can inscribe these things and capture value based on the data inside of your portfolio, right? So I mean, it's a pretty abstract concept, I think, to a lot of people who aren't familiar with data. So I think it's, that's one of the things that we're trying to do is like get people to see the data, become familiar with what's on Bitcoin, and really start to understand it. And I think that's, what's going to play a key role in letting people, really take advantage of what this means and put DMT in the spotlight.
Yeah, me and Will talk about this on a daily basis because Will seems to be pretty convinced that
there's
the physics angle is like the approach, and it's obviously like probably the most I don't know, like the way to the beautification of it all, right? Is like tie a parallel between like the fundamental mechanisms that have like introduced consciousness and life and like purpose in our physical universe.
Yeah.
Like the potential of that to kind of manifest into the digital space through like these native mechanisms that exist, or the native, I guess, properties that exist within Bitcoin's data layer. They can be harnessed through these mechanisms that we can create, such as non-arbitrary tokens, digital matter theory, such like that. Like that is pretty cool. Yeah. That's a great selling point, right? I'm convinced. I want to know more. How is this going to proliferate?
Yeah.
What do you mean we could build a digital universe like that's non-arbitrary?
Yeah.
It kind of like closely mimics our own physical universe.
Right.
I'm in.
Yeah.
But is that going to convince like the majority of people? We talk about this all the time. We're fucking nerds, right? So it's like, dude, we're in. So is it?
Yeah. So how would you? So yeah. What I'm saying is like we've been going deep into the thermodynamics.
That's right.
Of Bitcoin, and as a result, DMT, and as kind of a byproduct of all this is Bitmap and DMTs. Like these are thermodynamic properties of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But that's not going to convince the regular people, right? The people that are not nerds. So like, how would you like even begin to explain something like DMT as fundamental as it is to like its existence, right? We're talking about a data layer like Bitcoin that is unbreakable, right? If you were to manipulate the data on the blockchain, you would need an infinite amount of energy to kind of, solidify that information, right? So that's impossible. It's almost as if we can go at the speed of light. You just need an infinite amount of energy, right? And so that's why we're creating this parallel between physics and Bitcoin. But like, I don't know if it's even enough to say non-arbitrary tokens are based off the data of Bitcoin, because it's like saying, I have a 10,000 pound elephant. And if you don't know how the average weight of an elephant, that doesn't mean anything. Right. So we struggle with like.
Right. It's relative to your understanding. Right.
Exactly.
So it's like you're talking about understanding, the fundamentals of physics, which is,
not only that, not the fundamentals of physics. That's one thing that probably a lot of people don't understand. But the fundamentals of Bitcoin, why Bitcoin is why is it now ETFs all over the place? Like, why is it worth almost $1 trillion? Like, people don't understand why. It's because it solves a huge computer science problem. It is a data layer for money, right? People don't understand these things. So now when you're going like even deeper into like the nerd realm, it's like now we're generating tokens based off of data. Yeah. It's like, what the hell does that mean? And why should anyone care, right?
Yeah. So again, that's very cute, if you will. You know what I mean? It's great. I'm on board. I'm in the camp of like kind of like what you said earlier. WizOp. It's like it's going to be up to people who do, I guess, align, and believe this stuff. We're going to have to develop real application and use case of this.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best way to like get people to understand why this matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you were hearing a pitch about Bitcoin, right, from Satoshi, it's like, I got this idea. It's this blockchain thing. It's going to create like this thermodynamic property about money and all these things. Like nobody would give a damn. Not until it's built, there's a token associated, and then all of a sudden people care.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we did with DMT is like, you're not going to appreciate the data until there's like a token associated with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Once we start seeing real use cases, that's going to be a game changer for sure. But yeah, I mean, our goal for Bitmap, because I think Bitmap was similar in the early days, right? Like
it was.
People knew it was like a block number. That was kind of it, right? And people were trying to get the lowest block number in the early days. And that's what kind of people thought about it. But the goal for us since then has been to make people understand the intricacies of Bitmap a little bit deeper. And that's why we built Bitmap Community. And that was the driving force behind it. And, I think DMT is, it needs that same sort of thing as well as, someone to like you guys, you guys are doing a great job of it, of breaking it down and really just making it simple for people to fully grasp without having to dig into, all of the stuff, which really requires like some hard thinking. I think that's what makes the market go for it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think something also that you could probably contribute on, because you've already displayed like your powers of like data visualization through your platform that you've kind of put together. It's the most beautiful representation of like where is the value emerging from within Bitmap itself. So that is like one of the major missing components to DMT. And like, okay, so what? Elements, cool.
Yeah.
Data patterns on blockchain, wow. Those are just words to me.
Yeah.
Right. In my mind, the visualization of things is really what taps into our brains and gives us like intuitive understanding, just like Bitmap. We were talking about this earlier today. If Bitfeed.live didn't exist and Bitmap was literally just a text inscription, there's no.
It's just number.bitmap, like block number.bitmap.
There's nothing else there to really visualize what that is actually, what is manifesting as a result of that framework. Then like, I don't think it would have stuck, right?
Yeah, and the tough thing is Bitmap is largely visual. It's a metaverse, right? And when we're talking about non-arbitrary tokens, it's just a token. It's not a visual thing. It's like a representation of value.
Right, but if you think about it, the visuals are there. It's like every time a block is manifesting the transactions within it, these patterns are occurring in real time as we're speaking right now.
Yeah.
The potential energy is forming within the chain itself every second of existence.
Sing it to me, dude.
You know what I mean? But again, these are just words.
They are.
So how do we visualize that?
That is the challenge, right? So maybe WizOp, you can contribute to actually visualizing this stuff, because it's up to the creatives to really take this DMT concept and like say DMT is actually a real thing, and here's what it looks like, right? And so once we can do that, then it'll probably be an easier thing to kind of stomach for everybody.
I think so, or at least help.
100%. Yeah. And once people realize that, at least for BMT, it's tied to your Bitmap, they're going to love it even more. So yeah, I think that's what we're working towards for sure is, I think this is going to be a key player in the ecosystem, in the future. And so there's no doubt we're going to be having support.
Yeah. And a lot of this stuff, it's like, looking at the data and, the reason why we're talking about like even thermodynamics is because we're trying to build a virtual economic system, an economic system where it's not dependent on your geographical random location, right? And so as a result, when you go from analog to digital, you have a potential 10 to 100x value in terms of an economy, right? Mm-hmm. And so I bring that up because we need some sort of like kind of like physics layer, if you will, where we can manifest a digital commodities, which are these DMT tokens. Mm-hmm. And these digital commodities can be used for anything. Like if WizOp, if you're one part of the earth and I'm in another part of the earth and we discover this black fluid from the ground, right? We're looking at it as like, well, this is weird. What can I do with this black fluid, right? You're probably making, fuel out of it, and I'm probably making like tires out of it. But we decide what we do with these commodities, right? So the same thing is going to happen in the virtual environments. Like we're going to find these patterns, right? And you're going to inscribe a pattern for your own ecosystem, and I'm going to inscribe my pattern, right? This black substance for my own ecosystem, and we're going to have like an actual digital economy forming, right? I feel like this is something that is unheard of, right? It hasn't been done before, and the reason why we're so excited about it is because it's new. Right, we haven't seen this anywhere else in crypto, and we feel like from like a crypto's perspective, a new thing is a big deal.
Yeah, and it comes
100%. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it comes at a time where we're also at the same time feeling a little disillusioned, to be quite honest, because of the opportunity of Bitcoin like ecosystem emergence.
It's
is
being
like,
co-opted.
I was gonna say all that, but you know what I mean. It's like we're deploying the oldness, and from a lot of perspectives, it's like, I don't know. It introduces a lot of muck into the space that, you know, has traditionally resulted in a lot of I don't know, like a bad look.
Yeah.
Like for the whole crypto ecosystem, I guess. So yeah, it feels good, I guess, actually, like we're navigating our focus on something that is innately present. It doesn't require like too much smoke and mirror tactics to kind of like convey its value. But as a result, you know, those smoke and mirror things, like that is what is like the loudest discussion point, like on Twitter and such. That's what people are like looking for, because you don't have to explain it as much or think as hard to like find the value within this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. Give us like your reaction to that, dude. Like, are we? Do you think we're nuts?
Yeah.
Do you agree completely? Like, you know, this is actually the direction Bitmap should go towards, like the ecosystem, right? Because, you know, Bitmap, everything that's happening within it, this is the newness. This is the new stuff that hasn't been done before from our perspective, right? And there's a big attempt to bring all the oldness from like Ethereum and all these other L1s to Bitcoin.
Yeah. Copy pasta.
Yeah. Like, what do you think about all
that? Yeah, I think you guys are spot on, man. Like, you know, all those smoke and mirrors stuff, like that works short term, right? Like those are the people who are here for the short term, is the smoke and mirrors. And, you know, to me, that's not what's going to win long term. You know, personally, in my point of view, Bitcoin is very focused on decentralization, right? There's a culture here. It's very decentralized. You know, I think Satoshi, he would love DMTs, right? Like this is kind of his like style of thing. And I see this as being like this style of token, Bitmap, DMT, all this non-arbitrary stuff. I see that as being a winner in the long run, because we're not here to like pump it up. You know, we're here to build, and you know, we don't have like someone who's central like making these decisions. It's literally Bitcoin that's you know, controlling all of this stuff, and we're just kind of you know, using the resources that are on Bitcoin. So you know, I think that's really valuable, and something that will win, you know, in the long run. And you know, we could be at the beginning of something huge. Like you know, we're still so new here. I mean, it's been like, I don't know, DMT maybe a month or two, right? Bitmap 6-7 months. So we're still really new here, and there's just so much potential. And the fact that people are starting to understand that there can be this type of asset that's not decided by some central entity is huge. And you know, once more people start to understand that and start to build on that, I think, you know, the opportunities are endless here.
Yeah,
so glad you said that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, this whole DMT framework is just a formal way to recognize the data on Bitcoin in a way where we can kind of generate these tokens. And you're right. It's based off this data on Bitcoin. Like it cannot be manipulated. Like the pattern is there whether you believe in it or not. And those that do are going to inscribe that pattern. And then that's it. Like that's the end of the story. Whatever you do with that pattern is up to whoever's the deployer of that token, right? It could be anything, right? It could be digital commodities to like a new DeFi protocol that leverages the non-arbitrary expansion rate of that pattern, right? So that's the new stuff. And that I do agree with you, WizOp, that this is like the longevity. Like we're here for the longevity, because Bitcoin is going to last past our deaths.
As will the metaverse.
As will the metaverse, right?
Yeah, so the metaverse deserves like the most future-proof, like digital manifestation mechanisms that we can come up with, right? And that is what, you know, DMT represents.
Yeah,
it's
and
tying,
Bitmap,
it's tying it to exactly what you said. Bitcoin is going to be this forever thing.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're sourcing it, you know, to literally be like our Genesis device for the metaverse,
right,
seems to make a lot of sense to us.
Bitmap, DMT, they have a heartbeat, just like Bitcoin. Every 10 minutes, there's a new activity happening, right? And that's the best part.
Yeah. So yeah, we tend to get a little romantic, I guess, if there's a word for it, about all this stuff. But yeah, I'm glad you said that, WizOp, because Yeah, we talk, man. I don't know. So we have this channel, YouTube. So our job is to like be present and have our finger on the pulse of everything that's happening as much as to our ability. But also we've got our own like internal focus, right? The things that we actually truly feel have like, we have conviction for, that we see real value in.
Yeah.
Right. But and then it's like, man, it just feels weird at times. I don't know. Like we just feel like these. We feel
vultures.
like. What does it feel like? Yeah, I can't even like put it into words.
Yeah. Are you experiencing the same sort of sentiment that we are trying to describe, WizOp? Or
it must be like what goth kids in high school or something like that felt like.
Man, people don't understand me.
People don't understand goth, dude. Why? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. It's totally true. Yeah, like we're kind of like the odd men out here, right? Like, I feel like it shouldn't be that way, because to me it's so obvious that like this makes so much sense. Like, why would we do anything else? But I mean, I think over time people will see it, and as we start to make it a little bit more accessible to people and help people understand a little bit more, I think people are just going to continue to onboard until it hits that inflection point and it really starts to take over. That's how I see the future going.
Yeah, man. Let's end it right there. WizOp, thank you so much for joining us. Any final words, anything that you guys, I guess you're going to be releasing here in the next couple of weeks that you want to tell everybody about, or I guess any final thoughts on everything Bitmap, Bitmap Community, and DMT, or anything?
Yeah, I would say, we're definitely working towards some fun stuff. We're working on a marketplace right now. We're looking to add parcel support. We're working on like inscription support for parceling, and we want to eventually get into DMTs and tap tokens, and we really want to spread throughout the whole ecosystem. So yeah, we're on a we're growing right now, and we're looking for talented people who want to help. Please reach out, join the Discord. Let's chat about Bitmap, let's chat about DMT, whatever it is. We just, we're a very community focused project, and we're looking for talented people to help us build. So if that's you, please reach out. But man, let's just, keep building for Bitmap, and I think that we're all doing great work here, and let's just keep pushing forward.
Yeah, man. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. It's a huge value add to the community, and yeah, let's stay in touch with this whole DMT thing. There's a whole lot of stuff that's happening that we need contributors as well. So let's stay in touch, and let's see where we can take like all this like tangible value, and see if we can like overcome this the co-option that's happening right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for your time, and I appreciate everybody for watching, and until the next podcast. All right, guys, appreciate it.